Robbie Lawler was out of control.
This is Double Cross, the murder of Robbie Lawler.
It was going to be an all-out war with him in the middle of it.
Crime World special investigation podcast based on my new book, Web of Betrayal, wherever you get your podcasts. I had to actually tell you that I wasn't taking a photograph of you. I just have to hold the phone up like that to see what I'm doing.
I said you could take a picture if you want of me for your friends, if you want to show.
What if my friend? How? Like, do I have a friend who needs a photograph of you?
If you want, if some of them want, that's all I was saying.
For their wall, like.
Well, I'm just saying you have my permission.
We could make a poster of you, print it out, and the ladies could put it up on their walls. Is that what you're saying?
Friends, yeah, some of your lady friends.
Just tell me, while we're on it, not the lady friends, but what were you doing on New Year's Eve?
Well, I got a bit of I put up a post of I did a wash on New Year's Eve, and I said the final daily wash of 2024.
Right.
Probably do a daily wash all through 2025, and then it'll be 2026.
So that was New Year's Eve.
That was New Year's Eve, yeah.
But you were you in the washing machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's as exciting as it gets.
No, I get it. I totally get it. The non-stop visits to the washing machine. Mine is in my garage, so my kids often think, what is she doing out there again?
I don't know.
What does she do out there?
Why don't they do it themselves?
Yeah, why don't they just
do it themselves?
Do it themselves. What does she do? What is she doing in the garage? She's just always out there.
Because I did get one email saying about the glamorous life of a...
Did you? Of a what?
Top podcaster, probably
really?
The one that's probably the top podcaster on Crime World or whatever. They didn't say specifically, but
the Glamorous Life.
Yeah, and I was thinking, yeah,
so glam, isn't it?
Yeah. Speaking of glam,
I was going to say, well, at least we were free
to do our own
to do what we wanted.
Yes,
on New Year's Eve, whether you wanted to spend that night putting on a wash, sitting at home on your own, or being out with friends, whatever you did, we had the liberty to choose. Unlike the disgraced ex-Garda Superintendent John Spud Murphy. Look, this is an extraordinary story because Murphy was allowed out on compassionate leave, not for New Year's Eve, obviously, but for around the Christmas period. And he was given 24 hours out of Shelton Abbey. He's in that open prison, which is the luxury for a prisoner when they eventually get to the likes of Shelton or to... Lockenhouse, thank you.
Yeah, because the open prisons like Shelton Abbey, they have, I think they're in dormitories or whatever, but they have for example, they have a mobile phone, don't they? They have access to a mobile phone. They can come and grow within the ground.
Come and go even.
Come and go.
Or they can come and grow because they do grow things too.
As people. But
horticulture.
Yeah. But they can walk around the grounds, which are really beautiful.
Yeah.
And a lot of them would have jobs. Now, maybe not when they first come to Shelton Abbey, but then they do have... they're allowed to go out during the day and they return. So it's a really different regime. And the
purpose of it, of course, is to reintegrate prisoners to society before they are released and to build up that trust with them.
Yeah.
There is, for those in the main prison system, a lot of them, the aim is to finally get to these open prisons, to finally get that little bit of access to family, to friends, to work, to kind of freedom again.
Yes.
And sometimes people screw up and they end up punished by being put back into the main prison system where there's lock-up times, where there's much more kind of regime-like living. And those, who see them come back often cannot believe. They just think, what a gobshite.
I mean, a lot of them go back due to drug tests. So it'll be regular drug tests. A lot of people end up in Shelton Abbey after going on a drug-free wing of a prison, coming off drugs, being tested. And then that's obviously...
Or sometimes they just go, on these day release, they get a bit caught up doing something and they don't come back on time.
Yeah.
So it's any little digression like that and that's it. You're straight back into the main prison system. Now, Murphy must have been very happy to get into Shelton Abbey. Murphy's not your normal prisoner. This is an as we say, Garda Superintendent who was at the very top of his career for decades. He was head of Garda Traffic and, moved around and had a very prestigious Garda career. In his retirement, I think he had a party which was attended by various journalists, celebrities, etc., etc. He'd made a lot of friends during his time as an ex-Garda Superintendent, built up a big reputation. And then in his retirement, he was involved in sort of investments and private industry, as well as everything else. But I mean, it was a shocking story when he wound up being arrested and a big quantity of drugs being found on a premises belonging to him.
Yeah, 260,000.
In his home.
Yeah, 260,000 euros worth of cannabis. So if you consider that's, it's not personal use, let's put it that way, to be blunt. Now, we've had, obviously, guards being convicted of crimes and being involved in maybe sort of incidents involving drugs and cocaine, but they've tended to be two things. They've tended to be much lower rank Gardaí, and they've also tended to be much smaller quantities, where maybe a guard or an ex-guard has been, become maybe addicted to a substance. So John Murphy would be an absolute outlier, particularly in terms of the seniority that he had achieved. Now, in fairness, he wasn't a guard at the time the drugs were seized.
He was in retirement.
He'd long left. But it seems clear that he developed contacts with criminal figures during his time as a guard, and sometime after, according to himself, this is due to a series of bad investments and a battle with alcoholism, that he became sucked into this. He crossed that thin blue line, I suppose, and became involved in drug dealing. Now, the other side of the John Murphy story is that there's a broader investigation going on into the Hutch organised crime group and maybe other figures as well. What interactions they had with John Murphy, what role maybe the Hutch gang, what use they made of John Murphy. That's also something that's being investigated.
John Murphy has been described to me, certainly by those who would have known him, as an absolutely corrupted officer of the state, essentially. That he was somebody that it was shocking for many when it has come, and a lot of what hasn't come out yet. We don't know whether there's going to be court cases or if any of these revelations are going to be made. But the type of people he was in contact with over a prolonged period of time. I mean, you're talking senior members of the Hutch organised crime grouping. You're talking senior members of George Mitchell's grouping here in Ireland. That he was seen to be not only sort of meeting with them, but also socialising with them, and had built up a huge sort of friendship with many of them.
Yeah, and of course, guards and criminals have always, they do interact with each other, and they do, to an extent, come to know each other, and maybe even have a sort of a personal relationship or connection. But this clearly was way over that boundary. There was obviously the Hutch gang connection has been well ventilated, but it's also believed that he had interactions with Thomas the Zombie Savage, who would have been originally a member of George Mitchell's gang. Also had links with the INLA, the Zombie Savage, but certainly at one point would have been one of the major drug importers into Ireland, and had returned to Dublin, survived a couple of assassination attempts, and was living in North County Dublin, and is believed to have been in touch with John Murphy. So when it came out, the story.
But the suspicion is that he was essentially operating as a fixer for these gangs, and he could do various things or put them in touch maybe with dodgy financial people, or he could certainly, he's suspected of having sort of had a bit of an arm into the money laundering of a lot of the funds, or perhaps helping them with some of that. And again, these are all suspicions which are still under investigation. But he basically got himself into a huge, big, bloody mess, which culminated in his arrest with all this drugs and cash being found on his premises. His explanation to the court is very woolly. An alcohol problem and bad investments. It just feels not enough for the fall from grace that this man has suffered. Anyway, he's behind bars, which must have been a very dangerous place for him to go, given his rank in the Gardaí and, the nature of the relationship between Garda and criminal, behind bars in particular. So he gets to Shelton Abbey. He's seeing some sort of a way out, a future. Yeah. And what does he do? He screws it all up.
Yeah, because he was given compassionate leave. He's due to finish his sentence in 2026, I believe. So that would be quite early, a full year and a bit in advance to be getting compassionate leave. Now, prisoners get compassionate leave all the time. For example, the prisons are very open to giving, allowing people out for communion and confirmation services, actually, which clearly wouldn't be the case in John Murphy's case. But that is something, for example, that the prison service will believe, well, that's very much a family occasion, a sort of a lifelong memory, and they will try and facilitate things like that, or if family members are sick, or various other things along those, in that sort of arena. On that occasion, it's obviously, we have seen with other prisoners who are at the start of their sentence even, that might be brought to a funeral home, and they'd be brought under armed guard, handcuffed, and brought in to say goodbye to a loved one. But if the prisoners can be trusted, or there's a belief that they may be trusted, they'd be allowed out on their own, effectively. Obviously, if somebody is making their confirmation, you don't want, somebody appearing in handcuffs beside them.
Yeah.
So if there's a degree of trust that's given, and John Murphy was given that trust for 24 hours shortly before Christmas, but it didn't all work out.
So he was found in a licensed premises, which is part of the reason he's not allowed near a pub, basically, if he's on a day out.
No, I mean, clearly you would not be allowed in a pub. Now, he wasn't, it was in the aftermath that it was discovered he had been in a pub.
What happened? He went back and all was good, and a couple of days later there was obviously a report, or some sort of intelligence came in that he had been in this pub. And it was a pub in North County Dublin where he has been associated with for quite, it would be an old stomping ground of his.
An old stomping ground. And of course, people who know him would say they're not surprised, because that's his personality.
What is what is?
The bravado, the brash bravado.
I'm fine.
Look at me,
I'm back.
Yeah, I'm not going to hide away.
Right.
Go in and shake a few hands and continue to act the big man, I suppose.
Nothing's happened, nothing to see here?
No, more like, brazen it out and look at me and, sure, prison's grand and no problem, not somebody to hide away from any sort of limelight, even a negative limelight. So we believe it was reported back through to the prison service through various people, not just one report. Obviously then he's put in a position, he's brought in and asked to deny it, or I don't even know if they have to do that, but they probably don't. So he's returned to the Midlands. The Midlands is a very different kettle of fish than Shelton Abbey. I mean, Shelton Abbey, if you've ever been there, it's like
it's a beautiful building. Beautiful. What was it?
It was a country manor, I think.
Was it, or was it a religious?
Yeah, I'm not sure, actually. I'll have to look that back. Maybe it was a religious thing, but it's a very beautiful setting. There's grounds, there's ponds, isn't there, and ducks. And
looks like a kind of a luxury hotel. I'm sure it's not quite like that.
No, it's not, because you see inside it, they are kind of in dormitory, some sections, but they have freedom of, I think, getting up and cooking stuff when they want and all that sort of thing. But the Midlands would be a very different story, and he's back in a certain wing where, he wouldn't be allowed mix in just freely in some of the wings. So he's in a wing with a lot of sex offenders and those types. And
he's obviously sucking it up and doing his prison, and he's no shame or anything. I mean, I know certainly people around him are very ashamed of what has come of him, what he's done, what has been found, the connections he had been keeping. A lot of his former colleagues are horrified by what was going on, or what they believe was going on. I mean, during his sentence hearing in October 2022, it was said he went into debt. He was in debt to the tune of 855,000 due to poor business decisions. And from the evidence, it looked like every business decision he made was a poor one, and the money just constantly went down the drain, including 300,000 that he had to invest in taxi licenses before the industry was deregulated. It's a huge amount of money to have to invest, isn't it? And I mean, when are you talking the deregulation of the taxi industry?
Jeez, it was Michael.
He would have still been so he would have been still a serving member of the force at that stage on a salary that is, a good salary. Yeah. But for many people, really coming up to, their 40s, their 50s, they've kids, they've school fees, they have mortgages and all the rest of it, putting your hand on 300,000 to invest is massive. But of course, he was involved in other, I think, businesses throughout his
Yeah, I mean,
his
he was
career
involved
and in the aftermath.
Yeah, and in businesses in Africa. I mean, look, he certainly
He said
would
his
have.
drinking had clouded his judgment and brought him to this sorry place. But yeah, he was, I mean, I have met him on occasions many years ago. He would have been always knocking around, largely and a lot of the time with media. He was hanging around, and he was definitely a very confident individual. Wasn't particularly fond of him, I had to say. I never particularly took to him. He was a confident individual. He certainly drank, but he certainly didn't look like a guy who had a major big problem with the drink. Now, he says he obviously did, and that clouded his judgment. He was always a very dapper dressed guy. He was always very much aware of his, I suppose, power from his position at that stage, which was a high-ranking member of the Garda. And later in retirement, he sort of continued, he used that, the career really, to get him to get other opportunities. But to think that, he has had this fall from grace, he's gone into prison, and on his first opportunity, he's back confidently going around shaking hands saying, nothing to see here. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Yeah. And of course, he's collecting his Garda pension every week, no doubt.
Yeah, which is a very healthy one, no doubt, know.
I mean,
and that can't be taken from him.
No, I can't. I mean, if you pay in a pension, no matter what you do, you've basically it's your money, effectively.
Yes.
So it's. I mean, I think there are some countries where people can have that stripped off them, but certainly in Ireland.
And what is that big? The amount that the Gardaí get when they finish their career? What do you call that thing?
I don't know, but I mean, I suppose if I don't actually have a clue, but it's
I don't know whether
defined,
that was ever.
Well, it's a defined pension, and which are generous.
Yeah, they get the defined pension, but they also get an amount of money when they leave, which is not part of the pension.
Yeah, I mean, look, and people like guards are work hard, and it's a tough job. And
no, I'm talking about him. I'm talking about a guy who's is that payout on the basis that you haven't committed criminal offences during? I wonder, is there any sort of clauses with that? I've never known of anyone to have it reimbursed or taken from them or anything like that.
But I have to say, some of the things about the poverty and the investments, and sure, that may well be the case, but I mean, there's plenty of ex-guards, living comfortably on their pension and surviving. He wasn't driven to getting involved in drugs due to having to feed his kids or keep a roof over his head.
And it's his age of life with all that. And I mean,
he had a steady income at least in that, and he had other work. So
and other people have worked their way out of debt like that. I mean, many people would think that's a small debt.
Yeah.
880,000 on bad investments. There's ways around it. There's ways to sit down and I just find it phenomenal. I don't think we've heard the end of him. I think that, there's a lot of investigations and things being uncovered there in the background as part of a wider investigation into corruption. And his name seems to be all over things. So,
yes, time will tell.
Yeah. Okay, Niall, thank you.
Thanks, Nicola.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.